Sean Haney here with Real Agriculture and Real Ag Radio, and I'm joined right now by the Executive Vice President of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, Dennis Laycraft, based out of Calgary, Alberta. Dennis, how's it going?
Well, we're obviously keeping pretty busy with all the events that are occurring in our industry, but we got a great team working on it, so it's always energizing when you're working and really getting a sense of purpose around where we need to move to.
Yeah, obviously the Harmony plant that closed for 2 or 3 days back in late March was a bit of a shot across the bow, so to speak, of possibly what could be more to come. And yesterday's announcement that the Cargill plant in High River was going to be going down to one shift has definitely, I think, woken people to the potential impacts of COVID-19 on the beef supply chain. CCA has put an ask out, or is formulating their ask, of a setaside program. What exactly does that look like?
Well, and I'll kind of make it a step back. After our annual meeting when we came home a month ago, we started thinking what are possible scenarios to develop, and that's when we began discussions around a range of things, including set-aside. And we used set-aside during the BSE era in 2004 when we just had more cattle than we had available processing capacity. And really what it does is you start to put animals on a maintenance ration rather than on a growing ration. So you start to slow down the inventory of cattle that are coming to market and be market ready. So you try and match up market ready cattle to the available capacity. And in circumstances like this, we could see either slowdowns. We're seeing a shift closed. Hopefully it's just 2 weeks. That's the indication that they have an isolation period for so long. And it's being able to try and predict when we're going to see capacity come back online, and then trying to keep the inventories managed. And what we saw in 2004 when we were able to do that, we started to bring some stability back in the pricing of animals as well. Rather than just having everybody trying to move animals in at once and flooding the market, we're able to, through an industry management team working with government, we were able to look, this is the capacity, let's try and slow down this amount of our inventory so that we kind of create an equilibrium in the market that way.
Yeah, we've got the JBS plant in Greeley, Colorado, shut down to the 24th of April. We're hearing about slowdowns at the Tyson plant in Pasco, Washington. So clearly, this issue is not just a Canadian issue. It's obviously covering the western side of the United States as well, which are also home for Canadian cattle. So it definitely, this is a compounding inventory issue. How long? You mentioned 2 weeks, but of course that's not the end of it. How far are we actually trying to push this inventory issue out?
Well, usually, when you get into something like this, you want to plan. You sort of figure out how long you need, and then you can go twice as long to be ready for any circumstance. We're kind of looking 24 weeks out, and that's not to suggest we're expecting, disruptions to go that period of time. So once you do get some cattle start to get backed up in your system, it takes a while to work through them. So, we'll have the immediate issues that we're dealing with, and then, longer term, we want to be able to try and predict where we can and have provisions where you can't predict. You can hopefully, as we work through this and our social distancing efforts and all of the enhancements in plants continue to, strengthen our systems against COVID-19. There's still more to know about COVID-19, and the question are we going to see peaks and valleys and move through this for a period of time? So we're kind of looking at it over the course of about 6 months here so that we can manage inventories, and then, we'll all have to regroup depending on, how things look. But that said, if we manage it well now, we can minimize. And more importantly, we want to give producers tools so they can make the best possible decisions. And, at the end of the day, giving producers tools is always your best strategy.
Signing up for the program, you're voluntary, or would all cattle be placed into the program? How do you see it possibly working?
Great question. Last time we did this, it was kind of first come, first serve. It was sort of first in. What happened was there would be sort of, you'd estimate how many animals we feel we need to put on a maintenance ration to slow them down. And then it was opened up competitively people could say, okay, I'd like to bid in so many cattle for that period of time. So as people bid in, you'd take it until it was full. Certainly there was no mandatory requirement, and we tried to set it up in a way so that those individuals that first of all thought they had the right type of cattle to slow them down and would fit the program, that would be attractive to them. And that's part of the industry management group is, this is a very fluid situation. We need to be looking at, plants have slowed down. What's that capacity going to look like? If a plant's reopening, we want to make sure that, there may be times where you want to release cattle earlier out of a set-aside program, as you look for those days when more capacity becomes available and we can start processing at higher levels. And we're interested in what's happening south of the border as well. We want to create as much market dynamic as possible so we can keep the marketplace functioning as strongly as possible as well.
Have you discussed the plan with the federal government? And if so, what's been their response?
Yeah, we've reached out. We actually had discussions today. I think at this point, I think everybody's starting to look at what happened over the weekend and seeing the slowdown at Cargill. And, they've asked for more details, and we're starting to get into a much more significant discussion about it. We've also reached out through the provinces to the provincial governments. Back in 2004, we were going through the most extraordinary circumstances our industry had ever seen. And, at that time, some of the provinces stepped forward and, took leadership as we worked with the federal government. So we're coming at it from both ends and, making sure that, the administration of this has to be done. One size won't fit all in Canada. It's a very different situation in Eastern Canada and Western Canada. And we want to make sure we get the right parties involved. But at the same time, our message to government is, this is already starting. We need to have decisions very quickly. Similarly with price insurance, right now is the time of year when people get ready to price insure their calves or their grass cattle. And similarly, it isn't one tool that's going to be there to work for everybody. It's a suite of tools that we think is necessary. And for many people right now, there's as much urgency to get something moving on price insurance as it is on set-aside.
Has the federal government given you an answer on that insurance program? You were asking for, similar to crop insurance, a government participation in that premium to alleviate some of that burden on producers. Did they give you an answer back on it?
Again, that discussion is occurring. We've had a lot of discussion around what are different options to do that. I think there's the longer term on what the sharing on the premium could be. Certainly in the shorter term, premiums that might have been around $15 a head average are now around $75 a head average because of the huge volatility out there in the markets. And, as the administrators try and offset the risk as we head towards fall, all the things you normally use to offset risk are actually the greatest risk. So, one of the options we're also talking about is is there some way we could work together, get some sort of program to bring the premium down to pre-COVID levels? And, that'd be around that $15 to $20 a head. And, that would require a government investment on the other, which would be there if there is a payout required when those cattle are marketed. But then again, if we're able to manage our way through this, hopefully, the market recovers by then. So we're looking at a number of different ways of possibly getting that premium back down to where it does become a functional tool for the industry and offers meaningful protection. The message we give them is, if you can't use price insurance now, when the need is the greatest, then, people are going to lose confidence in these programs. Right now is the time when you need to be able to insure against risk.
You mentioned on the set-aside having stakeholders on board and all working together. We had Chris White from the Canadian Meat Council on Real Ag Radio this week. He said he was still looking for the details, and they were still they conceptually on side, but need to know more before they're fully on board and give their endorsement. When you talk to JBS and Cargill, are they on board with an idea of a set-aside?
Yeah, we've talked more through the Canadian Meat Council and raised these issues, and they're candidly they're really dialed in, and we're working very closely on, ensuring business continuity there. And, they recognize that, for an industry to be successful, you've got to have stability in all parts of your value chain. So it's been more conceptual at this stage, but, they've experienced, JBS wasn't here in 2004, but Cargill was. So, they're aware of, what we went through back then, and the fact it did bring some more stability into the industry. And, interesting enough, they don't want to be in a position where you have large inventories that are suddenly, being pushed on them urgently. Everyone prefers the inventories to be managed in a way that it's good for everybody's, business long term. These short term surges, tend to be a lot more disruptive to everybody involved in the chain.
If the federal government is not on board, Dennis, where does that leave the industry? That's it. We're feeling better about our conversations there. We're reaching out to the provinces as well. So, I think, I'm more encouraged today. So rather than, what are the other possibilities? I mean, obviously, as an industry, we've come through, challenges in the past, but I think there is a reasonable opportunity that, we're going to get some of these tools to help manage risk that are desperately needed right now. Urgent situation, compounding inventory issue, definitely an issue that that minister's office cannot punt down the road to deal with another day. It is one that needs to be dealt with now. Dennis, thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, and stay safe.